Welcome to Getting Our Reward Heads Together, the podcast for HR and reward leaders navigating the challenging world of reward. We bring you insights from the Reward Heads team and key partners to help you develop practical strategies to deliver reward that enables you to recruit, retain, and motivate in a fair way. Reward Heads are a boutique reward consultancy working with organisations of all sizes and sectors on solutions bespoke to them. Now, on with the podcast. Hi, I'm Victoria Milford. I'm the founder and CEO of Reward Heads, and today I'm joined by Co-Founder of HRDataHub, David Whitfield, to talk about some of the challenges in the tech sector when it comes to reward. Hi, David.
Hi, Victoria. Thank you very much for the invite to talk about this. There's some really specific challenges in this sector, and above the challenges that reward people are facing in every single sector. So this is a really hot topic right now.
Absolutely. So Reward Heads run a tech forum that you recently attended to share insights. That's for reward and HR people who work in the tech sector or have large tech teams. And we asked the group what their biggest challenges were. And we weren't terribly surprised to hear that the sort of big three were a lack of data on emerging roles, being able to find suitable matches for tech jobs when those jobs are ever evolving, and I guess the market itself moving very quickly.
Yeah, and this wasn't a surprise. We obviously speak to hundreds of reward professionals and HR folks in all shapes and sizes across different sectors. And they are genuinely struggling to get a handle on what will be one of the most crucial talent markets over the next 20 years, at least, as it starts to mature. The problem they've got is a lot of these roles, if you're old enough, you could probably remember back in the internet days when they first came around, just didn't exist a couple of years ago. So what's a prompt engineer? What's an AI conversation designer? I mean, I have no idea what they do. So having to try and figure out what they do, level it, and even trying to get some benchmark data, because we know the salary surveys are not going to be up to date with these type of roles. Sometimes they take years to try and integrate them into their job catalogue. So really struggling to identify the level, understand what it does, and how we can actually get the right pay for these type of roles. So a lot of HR folks are really struggling. And what we've seen is kind of new roles, but old tools don't really fit anymore. So AI, data and cyber jobs evolving faster than salary surveys can track. So just going back to my previous point, I don't know how a Towers or a Mercer can, for 1 second, try and keep up with this market. It's really difficult. So what we're looking to do is try and help people with this challenge. But I do really think that HR people need to be really focused on the design of those roles, making sure they're getting very precise definitions, and try not to be bamboozled by their IT director trying to, as we know, try and egg up some roles, which I think will be a real challenge for people.
Oh yeah, I've never met one of those, David. I don't know what you're on about. But no, you're absolutely right. Yeah, I think it's true for all roles, really, isn't it? That we need robust JDs, and they're often like hen's teeth, aren't they? Or certainly robust ones that you're not relying on a job title. As you say, the job title can mean something completely different. And if it's something like head of finance or HR managers, those are roles we're all really familiar with, and we've been benchmarking them for years. So even if the JD isn't that spectacular, we can still give a pretty decent mark assessment. But then, you get a role like some of those new ones that you've mentioned, which are a bit of a mystery, frankly. We really need to understand the detail of those before we can attempt to measure them in the market.
Yeah, and this is where reward teams, they have to adapt. So the old ways of working doesn't really work, I don't think, particularly for this population. So having more continuous benchmarking is going to be crucial, because the market is going to fluctuate. It's not going to settle down for quite a while. And becoming old now, I guess, but transparency is really important, because being able to track the talent and being very transparent with what you're offering is going to be really important. I just don't see talent wanting to apply for roles if they're not sure what the package is. So transparency, we know how important it is. It becomes even more important for these type of roles as well. And if you think about the traditional salary surveys, they kind of, they gather the data. We know they gather the data. They take months to analyze it, and then they come back with loads of questions, and then we redo it again. So by the time you're looking at the survey, sometimes the data is 3 or 4 months old. And then if you think about just that one period, 3 or 4 months, the market could have changed completely, let alone relying on that data for the next 12 months being fixed. So it does start to become really unreliable. And then,
no, that's a good point, because again, we could we can deal with that for things like HR and finance and so on, because it's not moving that fast in 3 or 4 months. But for these kinds of roles and this kind of sector, that can be a lifetime.
Yeah, and I guess for me, it's don't get me wrong, not every role is going to be moving really fast. It's just trying to identify those ones that are. And trying to make sure you keep pace with the reward you're offering. Because what we are seeing is actually, in some areas, the market is cooling. So there was this huge fight to try and get the talent in, particularly a year ago when AI was really starting to catch hold. And we saw some really dramatic impact in the market, some really quite huge sums of money being offered. But that's starting to settle as more and more talent obviously comes into the market. So we are seeing some of the cooling. That doesn't mean to say it's not going to be volatile going forward, particularly as you see more and more big startups happening around AI and bigger companies investing in AI. So there's going to be a war for talent. So we do expect that challenging environment to continue for the next few years at least.
For sure, and that speed of change isn't going to slow, is it? Things aren't going to settle down. I mean, as you suggested, it's probably going to get even faster with different jobs coming through all the time.
Yeah, and I said, next 5 years, it's just going to accelerate, particularly with routine roles. Well, I mean, what happens to all those routine roles that get replaced? What's happening with all those admin roles that they're looking for efficiencies, and AI can now take it over. So the actual volume of roles will be exponentially bigger as well. I do think Reward need to think about the types of skills that are going to be there, the hot skills in the market, and trying to keep pace with that market to understand what they are, and trying not to just think, oh, we're going to give them base and a car allowance and a bonus. We're trying to think beyond that with maybe some premiums, maybe some equity if you're in a position to do that, flexibility around work. So we're not going to sit here as reward professionals and just say it's just base pay and a bit of bonus and car. It is truly about the total package and bringing in all those different elements so you can be competitive in the market.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the point about total reward is one we make all the time, but I think it's amplified, isn't it, in this sector and these kinds of roles. It's not all about the base. She says, "Don't worry, I won't be doing any singing." Yeah, which is terrifying. I think that point about premiums and allowances is something that's definitely come up in our forum. It's something that many organisations are struggling with because those hot skills even are cooling and being replaced at quite some speed. So in the past, we might have given an allowance for something and people would have it for years, and we were cool with that. Now, actually, those hot skills aren't so hot anymore.
Yeah, and absolutely, and don't forget the internal market as well. You need to. There's always a knee-jerk reaction to try and pay huge sums of money to get talent into your business, but don't forget about your internal market and what the ripple effect that would be across all of that and across all of your roles. I think particularly if you are looking to develop talent in-house around this stuff, is making sure that actually you look after them as well, because I think very often we do develop people and then we kind of a bit shy about giving them pay aligned to the market. And that's when you lose talent, particularly if you're going to bring in other people at much larger salaries. That will just unsettle your internal talent and then move elsewhere.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually, because it's easy to think about roles and structure and processes. But at the end of the day, there are human beings involved in people's lives and careers. So, it's definitely worth paying allowances for those skills rather than baking them in and giving yourself a problem. But how do we enable those people in those roles to be, keeping up to date with new skills and developing them and getting those allowances and earning them? It's not a reward issue, is it? It's a much broader people issue. And I think your point about those broader reward offerings is well made. So we're always encouraging clients to think about the full offering and not just relying on the base, as we said, and what can make them stand out as an employer. And I think that point about learning is a key one, because we know that younger employees in particular really value development and continuous learning. So if you're an employer offering that, you're already one step ahead. And particularly in the tech space, that's absolutely critical because those skills are evolving at pace.
So we're absolutely seeing rewards diversifying. So employers are now looking to kind of blend cash, equity, and learning. And I think this is the big opportunity. I think is the learning part. Is kind of putting your bets on talent coming into the business, or even existing talent in the business, to say we're going to invest in you, and we're going to invest in particular set of skills around AI or cybersecurity, etc. And then obviously then reward them as well as they start to learn those skills, and obviously they become more attractive against the market. And that kind of leads me on to the next point, really, is as we all know, retention beats attraction. So keeping that critical talent through, we could do the learning stuff I've talked about, but stay bonuses, retention bonuses is so much cheaper and actually far better for the business, because they already know the business, they're ingrained, they know the culture. So trying to make sure you look after your internal talent and making sure you put a broad, holistic package together for them, and looking after them, rather than having to get that churn and always having to be chasing that market premium all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, because we know that, keeping people is a heck of a lot cheaper than going out and getting new ones. So arguably that's always true, but even more so in rapidly changing market, because what we do know is one thing that really winds people up is new hires coming in on more than them. And you sort of alluded to that before, didn't you? People internally developing skills and not really getting paid for it because they're already here and we're banking on them. So what would you say are some of the real watch outs for reward in tech?
I think there's a few, actually. So I think the first one is just those snap decisions. So try and avoid overreacting with quite ridiculous sky high offers. I think this comes a little bit. I think there's kind of a onus on reward people just to educate themselves a little bit on AI if they can. I think it's a subject that I think if you're going to truly be able to evaluate roles and to match them well to the market, I think the onus is on reward professionals just to understand the framework of AI and how it works and how those different roles fit together. I think that could be a really interesting development for lots of reward people, and I think that would help them because they can challenge back a lot more, and not be convinced by some recruitment agencies or an IT director to pay way above market. And that's where you get a lot of the hype. So you will get, and I had this in my previous life all the time, the hype train, the hype cycle. So IT lead, they'll come in and they'll write a 70-page role profile that you never understand, don't know what it is, and just trying to make sure they can get the highest salary possible to get the talent into the business. So being in a position to challenge that, I know will be very difficult. But I think it's almost a must, really, for HR folks to really start to understand this AI space. And I think the third one for me is also. Sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say maybe it's almost not letting our processes go out the window. We've most businesses have got robust ways of assessing how big a job is and a way of going out and benchmarking them. And these are just jobs at the end of the day. They can be assessed in the same way, and we shouldn't be bamboozled by the language or the sort of we're very special kind of thinking that, as you've said, it's got to be fair. It's got to be fair across the organisation. So we've got to have a process, right?
Yeah, and I'm sure lots of reward people listening to this have been here hundreds of times before, where managers and people are trying to, uptalk a lot of their roles because they want to get the highest pay possible or the highest grade possible to get the talent in. They're trying to fight for that. The other thing is, I think we talked about this previously, but just don't ignore that internal equity. Paying those sky high prices will inevitably break your internal equity and cause you problems. It causes you legal problems as well. You need to start thinking about that as well. And then lastly, stay data led, not anecdotal led. So make sure you benchmark against multiple sources. I would say don't try and just rely on the old school Towers, Watson, Mercer. Don't try and sort of shoehorn into some vague match into their survey to try and get some data, because it just won't be right. So you just need to make sure that you get the right data from the right sources. And one of those is HRDataHub, of course. So because we can provide that live market insight.
So again, I think lots of the issues that we are used to facing as reward experts, but probably just amplified or exaggerated by the pace and by some of the complexity of the roles.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this adds to that kind of role confusion trap sometimes. So I think you think about, if you get a role to evaluate that says AI engineer, that can be wildly different in terms of what it does. It could be quite a junior role. It could be a very senior role. It could be, groundbreaking new AI that we've never even heard of before, a different space. So, like the old, the worst role to benchmark and level are project managers, as we know. AI engineer is going to be something similar. I think it's going to be quite difficult to quantify what they do, because you will get an AI engineer could be paid 40 or could be paid 200,000. So it's going to be a very broad band on that in terms of how you actually position it against the market. So you have to be benchmarking on actual skills, not just the label.
Lots to think about here. So thank you, David, for talking about this with me. So how would people reach you if they'd like to take a look at the HRDataHub platform?
Yeah, really easy. Just pop me an email, david@hrdataHub.com. I'm on LinkedIn, so you can always send me a message on LinkedIn. We can give you a couple of days free trial. You can check it out. You can look at all those weird and wonderful roles that we found on there. And we'd very much welcome feedback, and we'd love to work with people in the tech sector, and we could be able to help them. And I'm sure we'll be there in and around the Reward Heads Tech Forum as well, supporting as best we can.
Absolutely. And if there is anyone listening who isn't already coming to our tech forum, please do just drop me a note at victoria@rewardheads.co.uk. And of course, we'd love to support anyone with any work in this area. So contact me, or you can reach the wider Reward Heads team on rewardsolutions@rewardheads.co.uk. Hope everyone found that insightful. And do reach out to David or I if you have any questions or feedback.
Brilliant. Thank you.